Switzerland may be one of the smallest countries in Western Europe, but for its size it has the most comprehensive railway network of the continent. The Swiss Federal Railways operates alongside numerous private companies. One of the best known and most popular of these is the Rhaetian Railway, whose 375-kilometre network of metre-gauge track lies in Graubünden, the largest of Switzerland's cantons. The Rhaetian Railway Company was formed at the end of the 19th century, taking over the existing Landquart-Davos Company and opening its own lines from Chur to St. Moritz and along the Rhine Valley as far as Elanz. Within a decade, the Davos line was linked to the Albula line at Filisur, and the route to Disentis had been completed. The last part of the network to come into operation was the line along the Engadine Valley, which opened on the 1st of July 1913. The line through the Engadine Valley begins at the renowned alpine resort of St. Moritz, which has been attracting visitors for centuries. Initially, tourists came to benefit from the healing springs found near the head of the lake, although the Hotel Kurhaus today is the location for a very 20th century holiday pastime. Cross-country skiing is a discipline which attracts many visitors each winter, although in March the valley positively teems as thousands of contestants from all over the world converge for the Engadine Ski Marathon, held annually for the last quarter of a century. Ice sculptures are a seasonal feature of this region, with the ice being built up and carved by hand into wonderful designs. One of the sponsors of White Turf, the horse racing complex situated on the frozen lake at St. Moritz, has utilized this unusual art form to produce an appropriate advertising feature for the latest brew. This race meeting, held in some of the most spectacular surroundings in the world, is one of the highlights of the St. Moritz winter social calendar, drawing top-class horses and jockeys from all over the world. As well as the usual flat racing, trotting competitions are held, with special sledges replacing wheeled carriages. These are higher than the normal racing sulky in order to protect the driver from being blinded by snow spray.
Das ist jetzt der Fall, aber geht an RhB vorbei und macht noch Jagd auf den führenden Üstabdire. Üstabdire ist vorne, aber Taldon innen kommt. Taldon lässt nicht locker, aber Üstabdire scheint in Sicherheit. Üstabdire vor Taldon.
However, the most nerve-wracking of all the equestrian sports found on the lake must be ski-yoring, described as Ben-Hur on ice. This sport, which was introduced in 1906, is unique to St. Moritz. It's a thrilling mixture of horse racing and skiing, with the drivers being towed behind their galloping steeds at speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour.
Durch den Bogen einen Vorsprung von einer Länge gegen Arabian Star, dann Coralto und Sacred Number. Tudor Age jetzt angegriffen von zwei...
Competition is fierce, and there's the ever-present risk of a driver's skis being trodden on by a rival horse. Those who survive the breakneck chase around the track are rightly acclaimed as local heroes, and the winner revels in his hard-won victory. By the summer, the ice has disappeared and the lake once more is in a liquid state, its clear waters being enjoyed to the full by yachtsmen. St. Moritz Station is the terminus of the Albula and Bernina lines, as well as being the starting point of our route along the Engadine Valley. Our 57-kilometre journey will take us alongside the river Inn in a northeasterly direction towards our destination at Scuol-Tarasp. At the edge of Moritz station, we enter the Argentieri Tunnel, the first of 19 tunnels and galleries found along our way. For the first 8 kilometres of our route, we run along the tracks of the Albula line, opened in July 1904. The Engadine route was operated with electricity from its opening in 1913 at 11 kilovolts AC, 16 2/3 cycles, and the existing line from Bavor to Moritz gained its catenary at the same time, though trains from Chur continued to be steam-hauled for a further 6 years. The RhB was influenced in its decision to adopt this new form of traction by the success of the neighbouring Vereina Railway, although it decided against DC current in favour of the AC system, which was then being adopted by other private Swiss companies such as the BLS. Samedan Golf Club is situated a short distance from the track. This is Switzerland's oldest 18-hole course, founded in 1882. A 3-kilometre line branches off at right angles to our track, linking Samedan with Pontresina. This enables trains to make the connection with the Vereina Line, which runs over the Alps from Moritz to Tirano in Italy. Samedan is not only an important junction, but has also been the site of the main depot of this part of the network since 1903. Some of the more senior members of the RhB fleet are housed here when not in special service on the network. For the opening of the Engadine Line, 7 GE24 locomotives, numbers 201 to 207, were purchased from SLM, with electrical equipment by BBC. The only machine still in its original state is number 207, which has been on display at the Swiss Transport Museum in Lucerne since 1982. On one side, the panels have been removed to show the Derry drive motor and interior workings. Numbers 203 and 204 were rebuilt and renumbered 221 and 222 in the mid-1940s. Number 222 is occasionally used on special excursion trains, delighting visitors lucky enough to catch a glimpse of her in action. Number 202, now renumbered 211, has been converted into a diesel-electric shunting locomotive. It still plays an active role at Lanquart Depot over 80 years after beginning work for the RhB. 2 GE46 locomotives, numbers 301 and 302, were also purchased from SLM, together with 5 slightly more powerful sisters, numbers 351 to 355. All of these were withdrawn from service between 1967 and 1984, apart from number 353, which has been retained to appear on special occasions. The much-loved GE 661 baby crocodiles were once in regular use on the Engadine Line, although today they operate only occasional services along this route. The majority of trains are headed by GE 44 locomotives, the first series of which, numbered 601 to 610, were purchased by the RhB in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Our train is being hauled by one of the second series machines, which entered service in the 1970s and 80s. These stalwart workhorses, with their top speed of 90 kilometers per hour, were built by SLM with electrical equipment by BBC. The Rhaetian Railway's metre-gauge network is almost entirely single track, and the route along the Engadine Valley is no exception, with passing possible in stations only. At Bever, our tracks diverge from the Albula rails, which turn away to our left along the Bever Valley towards Chur. Building work on the line to Scuol-Tarasp began in 1908, but the difficult nature of much of the terrain and the numerous tunnels and viaducts which needed to be constructed meant that the work progressed slowly, and it was 5 years before the route was opened. Originally, there were plans to continue the tracks from Scuol to Landeck in Austria to make the connection with the Arlberg Railway. However, the First World War intervened and the idea was subsequently abandoned. The Engadine Valley is an important centre of the Romansh tongue, Switzerland's fourth official language. This is a derivative of Latin and is taught in local schools, ensuring its survival as a living language into the 20th century. Zuoz was once the chief town of the upper Engadine Valley, and its impressive houses bear evidence to its former importance. There was a settlement here in the Bronze Age on the hillside above the present town, although the first written records which mention Zuoz date from the early 9th century. These refer to a royal inn of the Holy Roman Empire which probably stood on the site of the Hotel Krustjalva, whose present building dates from 1570. In the 12th century, the region was acquired by the Bishop of Chur, and Zuoz became the seat of the episcopal court. 300 years later, during the Swabian War against Austria, the citizens burned their own town and fled into the mountains rather than submit. Many of the beautiful buildings now found here date to the period of rebuilding. The settlement remained the region's political centre until the beginning of the 19th century, when Graubünden became part of the Swiss Confederation. We've now covered over a quarter of our journey, and will shortly pass from the upper to the lower Engadine region. The 4 motors which drive our locomotive are capable of producing a total of 2,300 horsepower, which is more than sufficient to haul the loads along the Engadine Line. The steepest gradients found along our way are only 1 in 40, which makes this the gentlest of all the Rhaetian Railway's routes. The valley lies in one of the highest regions of Switzerland, and our altitude never falls below the 1,200-metre mark, as the train makes a gradual descent towards Scuol-Tarasp. The mountains to the right of our train look at first sight like any other peaks of the region. However, this is a special area. Since August 1914, it's been set aside as the Swiss National Park, a 168 square kilometre nature sanctuary. About a third of the park is forested, and almost 5,000 different species of fauna are contained within its boundaries. Wolves and bears no longer roam the hills, although ibex were reintroduced during the 1920s, and there's now a flourishing colony. Information about the region can be obtained from the National Park House in Zernetz, where walkers are encouraged to experience at first hand the delights of nature in spectacular surroundings. graceful stone-arched viaduct, the central span of which stretches for 47 metres, carries the track 113 metres from the western to the eastern bank of the River Inn. The terrain now becomes difficult, and the railway builders were forced to use a series of tunnels and viaducts in order to take the track along the steep valley side. The construction of the viaduct across the Val Mela cost 12 lives when the structure collapsed during the course of building in August 1911. The town of Zernetz, which grew up at the point where the Ofen Pass from Italy joins the Engadine Valley, has been an important settlement for centuries. In the early years, some of the Engadine trains were steam-hauled, and the gentle gradients found along this route make it an ideal line for one of the vintage Rhaetian locomotives to haul regular excursion trains between Samedan and Scuol. These steam specials are a joint venture between the RhB and the Engadine Railway Enthusiasts Club, the CEAV, whose members are not only involved with full-size machines, but also model in various gauges. The RhB still has two of her former fleet of 29 G45 locomotives in service. Loco 108 is based in Samedan and operates along the Engadine, while sister Loco 107 is stabled at Lanquart and mainly runs along the Davos and Rhine routes. The G45 machines, built by SLM, were brought into service between 1906 and 1915 to haul passenger and goods trains along the Rhaetian network. They replaced the earlier G34 and Malay locomotives, which were unsuited to the increasing passenger and goods loadings. Loco 108 develops around 800 horsepower from its two cylinders of 580mm bore and 440mm stroke. She's a superheated machine working at 12 bar, or 185 pounds per square inch. Her tender is capable of carrying a modest 2.5 tons of coal, although the undemanding route along the Engadine means that the full capacity is not normally utilised. At Scuol station, 108 must make use of the turntable to change direction, enabling her to run boiler first both up and down the line. She's almost 14 metres in length from buffer to buffer, which makes for a snug fit. At 67 tons, she's no lightweight, and several men are required to turn her. Although she takes on coal only at Samedan, watering is carried out at various points on the line, and her tender is capable of carrying 9.85 cubic metres when full. The water's chemically treated on filling to reduce scaling problems caused by hard water sources. Steam specials utilise a mixture of four-wheel stock, dating from the turn of the century, and second-class eight-wheeled bogie coaches built in the 1920s and 30s, all of which have the original wooden slatted seats. An informal buffet service run by the CEAV is available in the old baggage wagon, dating from 1897, one of the earliest items of Rhaetian rolling stock to survive. With a top speed capability of only 45 kilometers per hour, her timetable has to be flexible to allow the scheduled faster services to pass. However, the enthusiastic passengers behind this grand old lady are in no hurry and happy to have time to enjoy the sounds and smells of the run. By Zenets, we've covered just over half the distance to Scuol, but still have almost 25 kilometers left to travel. The track once more passes over the River Inn, this time by means of a single-span steel girder bridge, a contrast to the usual stone-arched viaducts found along this line. In 1367, the Gotteshausbund, or Church League, was founded in this area to resist Austrian infiltration into the valley. A century later, it was joined by two other leagues from neighboring regions, the Graue Bund of the Rhine Valley and the Seengerichterbund, which banded together in 1471 to form the Drei Bunde, or Three Leagues, the forerunner of the present-day Canton Graubünden. The construction site beside our tracks is not a local quarry, but a new facility for the railway. This is the southern portal of the Vereina Tunnel workings, a 20-kilometre-long bore which, when completed, will link the Engadine Line with the RhB's tracks at Klosters. The name of the tunnel is taken from the Vereina Pass, situated above the excavation. Workers are taken to the tunnel face by special trains, some of which were used during the boring of the Channel Tunnel between Folkestone and Calais. An average of 200 people are employed on the project, a much smaller number in comparison with the men who worked on the Albula Tunnel almost a century earlier. Work began in April 1991. And a grand opening is scheduled for the year 2000. The task of the tunnel surveyors is greatly assisted these days by laser sighting, with the red beams helping to keep the boring work on course. Different excavation methods are in operation at either end of the project. Workers at the southern face are using the traditional blasting method, with a series of holes bored in the rock to take the dynamite charges. The loosened rock can then be removed by electric dump truck, conveyor belt and train. On the northern side, a specially constructed boring machine is at work. The tunnel will be single track with 3 passing places, enabling a maximum of 8 trains to be in the bore at the same time. Besides scheduled passenger and goods services, a car ferry shuttle will operate, giving visitors the chance of an easy journey to the Engadine, avoiding the Albula, Julia and Fluela mountain passes. The The gradients of the track running along the side of the valley are so level that for the next 10 kilometers our height varies by only a few meters. The River Inn, which lies close to the line for the whole of our journey, rises in the upper Engadine Valley and flows for 104 kilometers through Switzerland. It subsequently passes through Austria and Germany, emptying into the River Danube at Passau. Guarda station lies some 200 meters directly below the village it serves. Because of the narrowness of the valley floor, the villages in this region are sited on plateaus high above the river. The settlement, first mentioned in the 12th century, lies on the old pack-horse route between Austria and Italy. It was burned by the Austrians in 1622, and many of the lovely old dwellings found here date from the period of rebuilding. Engadine houses are a combination of family home and barn, the inhabitants of Guarda still mainly working on the land. House facades are often painted and walls are thick with deep window niches made colourful by flower-filled boxes during the summer months. A traditional Engadine form of decoration is sgraffito, found especially around doors and windows. Grey plaster is overlaid by a white lime wash, which is then scratched in a pattern to show the underlying surface. Inside, many of the rooms retain their original wooden panelling, which gives a wonderful fragrance as well as a warm and friendly appearance. After Guarda, the valley becomes extremely narrow, and the railway builders were forced to excavate a series of tunnels, one almost 2,000 metres in length. Ardets station is a scheduled passing place, and our train must pause at the signal outside the village to wait while passengers board the St. Moritz-bound train. Once we arrive, the up train will be able to leave and pass over the single track which we are now occupying. The village of Ardets is dominated by the ruins of the Steinsberg Castle, one of the many fortifications erected along this important valley during the Middle Ages. It was destroyed by the Austrians in 1499, and its remains make a prominent landmark along this part of the valley. The longest excavation on the whole of this line, at 2,350 metres, is the Tasna Tunnel. It's currently the second longest bore on the Rhaetian Railway, only exceeded by the Albula Tunnel, although they'll both be superseded once the Vereina Tunnel has opened. The Val Puzza Viaduct, at 136 metres, is the longest on the Engadine Line. It's also the loftiest, carrying the track some 53 metres above the valley floor. The imposing outline of Tarasp Castle, perched on a rock outcrop, dominates this section of the valley. Journey's End is at Scuol-Tarasp, the most easterly station on the entire Rhaetian Railway network. Although the line terminates here, there have recently been suggestions again of an extension to the Austrian border. The region has been inhabited since the Bronze Age, and the village of Scuol, sited on a plateau above the river, is the chief settlement hereabouts. This part of the Engadine Valley has been a popular spa centre for well over a century, with health-conscious visitors from all over Europe attracted by the facilities at Scuol, Vereina and Tarasp. The custom of bathing and taking the waters still flourishes, and a luxurious new complex was opened in the centre of Scuol in 1993. This opulent marble and glass establishment features a large indoor pool which is used for general bathing as well as therapy sessions. Several specialist annexes give bathers the opportunity to sample a variety of water temperatures, flows and types. For those wishing to combine the joys of bathing with the pure atmosphere of the region, the outdoor heated mineral water pool remains at a pleasant 34 degrees centigrade all the year, allowing open-air bathing in both summer and winter. For the ultimate in luxury, a visit to the magnificent Roman-Irish bath complex is a special treat. Here, a combination of hot air and steam bathing is augmented with a massage and the chance to relax in pleasant surroundings wrapped in thick, hot towels. Earlier inhabitants of the region lived in rather more Spartan conditions. Tarasp Castle was built by the Counts of Tarasp, rich and powerful local landowners, one of whom was Bishop of Chur in the 11th century. The estate passed into Habsburg control in the 15th century and remained under Austrian domination until the Napoleonic Wars, when it was transferred to the newly created Swiss canton of Graubünden. Since 1827, the castle has been in private hands and is today the property of Princess Margaret of Hesse. A massive restoration program was carried out in the early part of the 20th century, so the ancient structure is today in superb condition. The castle, perched on a rocky outcrop, has unobstructed views over the surrounding countryside, and any advancing enemy would have been clearly visible long before an attack be mounted. The courtyard roofs are sloped towards the inside of the complex, in order that rainwater could be channeled into guttering, which in turn led to a cistern, thereby safeguarding vital water supplies in times of siege. Linking the awe-inspiring castle of Tarasp to the serene lakeland scenery around St. Moritz, the route along the Engadine Valley provides a truly unforgettable journey through southeastern Switzerland.